Hey everyone, and welcome back to Professor's Play, the show where you can get just a pixel of deep thinking with your mostly nonsensical video game discussions. This is Season 2, Episode 18. I am Professor Phil Chavot, he's Professor John Adams, he's Professor Brandon West, and together we are professors who play video games. We are back after just a couple of weeks from our Pokemon Go special episode. Go check it out if you haven't. We had a guest professor, we talked about one of the most popular games ever, and judging by the viewing figures, a lot of you haven't checked it out, so go ahead and do that. But we are back to tackle a two-part series, so the first time we're doing that, with the newest Harvest Moon game, Winds of Anthos. That released earlier this year to very little fanfare. In fact, there's no Wikipedia page for this game.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
It released in September, late September of this year, so it's been out for about 2 months now. But before we get into it, this is a two-part series, right? So today we're doing some background and first impressions, and our full review will come in 3 weeks. So, with that, let's jump in. But I guess first, I'm going to ask John, how are you doing?
I wore my ranching clothes.
He did wear his ranching clothes today. So if you're watching, John is
farming game. Plaid?
Wearing his Wyoming clothes.
Jeans?
Yeah.
We're doing it.
Oh, I could have worn
Ranching.
plaid today. I didn't even
Could've.
think about it.
We really got to coordinate this better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no kidding.
We're gonna be hipster farmers playing the game that no one else
No,
is
no,
playing.
I'm pretty sure my red and black
Yeah,
plaid button down was like just sitting there in my closet.
Missed
I don't
opportunity.
have a red and black one, but I have a red and blue plaid.
That would have worked.
Ranching.
Yeah.
Brandon, how are you doing?
Primary colors. Yeah, I'm doing all right.
That's good. Brandon woke up and made it here today, which is great.
And I mean, literally, that's all I've done today. Is I woke up and realized I got to be on campus.
Here we are.
So I fed my cats.
Which,
and
you know,
left.
feeds into the whole Harvest Moon mechanic, because you're waking up and you're doing a bunch
You're doing
of
the
stuff.
things
Yeah,
first
that's
thing
it.
in the morning,
That's
which
it.
That's
for
true.
you is 12:30.
So what is nice little segue? What is Harvest Moon? Harvest Moon is a farming simulator RPG style series. So you don't build your character, so to speak, but you build your farm better. Could we not? Okay. We'll just leave that up in the air for the people listening. It started in 1998 with Harvest Moon 64, which is how they named every game for the Nintendo 64, because apparently there's not enough marketing in the Nintendo 64 already.
Right.
So in it, your goal is to basically build up a derelict farm into a farming conglomerate, essentially make money. The story usually encompasses something like, your grandfather left you a farm and you have to take care of it. John, you played the originals. Am I missing something here?
Yeah, there was one for the Super Nintendo too, I believe. I didn't play that one, but I did play the N64 one. It's a great game. It mostly revolves around making a farm, and there's a big dating sim aspect to Harvest Moon, where you are trying to wed and have a family with somebody. And in the older games, if you didn't have a family or meet somebody or marry someone, you actually lost the game because you were not able to establish a successful farm. My fun fact: my first dog was named Ellie, who was the name of my first wife in the first Harvest Moon game that I played.
Oh.
Which is sad but fun.
Sad but fun.
I think it's cute.
Yeah.
Video games have so many emotions. Sad but fun. And you're right. The first game, it's 1998, but it's not for Nintendo 64. It's for
Super
it
Nintendo?
It was for Super Nintendo. In Japan it was a pack-in game, and it came to the West in 1998.
What is a pack-in game?
It was part of something else, and Harvest Moon was attached to it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Usually you do that with games that you don't think are going to succeed. So
Yeah, I only knew about it that the Super Nintendo version of it existed because it just came to the Nintendo Online.
yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the options you can now play for free.
So essentially, if you've played or seen Stardew Valley, a series called Story of Seasons, which more on that later, or Animal Crossing, you've essentially seen what this is.
Yep.
Right? Except for the dating sim aspect for like Animal Crossing. But in fact, Harvest Moon is the OG of all of these. It came before any of them. Okay.
Nice.
However, the story of this new Harvest Moon is pretty out there, and this is an open world game, which is unusual for these games. They're focused on having a farm and making it better. There's no real reason to have an open world. That's kind of because this Harvest Moon series isn't Harvest Moon, but it is Harvest Moon, but it's at the same time it's not.
What do you mean?
So, since the first game in 1996 in Japan, 1998 here, there have been many games in the series, with the latest it's not Harvest Moon Winds of Anthos, even though that is the latest game to release. The latest game in the Harvest Moon series is Story of Seasons Trio of Towns from 2017 for Nintendo DS. And if that sentence seemed contradictory to what I said in the beginning of the episode, you're right. Nice, you guys picked it up correctly. Buckle up, because this is a fun story. Okay. So originally Harvest Moon was only called Harvest Moon in the West. In Japan, where it comes from with the producer Marvelous, that's the name of the producer, it was called Bokujo Monogatari, which means farm story. Okay. So the name Harvest Moon is a westernization.
Interesting.
Because apparently farm story isn't enough of
I was going to ask why Farm Story wasn't. That seems
I don't have that
could've
information.
ported
I
over.
need to ask one of my Japanese friends or faculty to read the actual in Japanese entries. Basically,
If I may, I'll say that I think Harvest Moon is the objectively cooler title.
I agree.
Do you think so?
I think so, but I think Farm Story works.
Yeah.
Like-
Well, there's a thing in Japan where naming things story. So Monogatari, which is a couple of, if I'm not mistaken, words put together. It is, and that's how you name, multiple part stories.
Okay.
So
okay.
using the title Monogatari means this is a long form content thing. So a lot of
It'd be the equivalent of saga.
yeah. So a lot of
Saga.
the most famous
okay.
tales of Japanese history, like fairy or regular, are called Monogatari, which means the story of this
Yeah.
thing. And these are the ones that start with Once Upon a Time kind of thing.
But Farm Saga would have been a cool name
Yeah.
too.
But
But anyway, we called it Harvest Moon.
Harvest Moon.
That almost sounds
So-
a little too epic to me, though. Farm Saga?
That's fair.
I expect some trolls or frost giants. to show up.
That's we're going to talk about that as well. So to start off, the name Harvest Moon is only something associated with the franchise here in the West,
Yep.
right? So it helps uncomplicate things for Japan, but complicate things for us. So in the early 2010s, the company that developed Harvest Moon / Farm Story games in Japan, Marvelous, stopped licensing the name Harvest Moon, to its producer in the West called Natsume. Okay, so Natsume is an American company. They're in California. They localize and to help develop the games
Yep.
in the West. So like a good American capitalist company, Natsume saw this as an opportunity to start their own series called Harvest Moon, because Harvest Moon theoretically didn't exist anymore.
Because they just stopped,
They stopped
registering that.
They stopped
trademark.
registering that trademark.
Okay.
That name wasn't attached to anything anymore. So they were like, we have already developed these games, we have the engine, let's just make our own Harvest Moons. So Harvest Moon Winds of Anthos is part of a Harvest Moon series that started with the original West developer of the original Harvest Moon, but it's not part of the original series.
This time it'll have Blackjack and Lake.
Yeah, exactly. So Marvelous obviously still wanted to produce farm story games, right? So it continued doing that, but now in the West, it can't call it Harvest Moon anymore.
Because they don't own it.
They don't own it. So they call that series Story of Seasons, not Farm Story. Don't ask me why.
Okay.
In Japan, it's just stayed Farm Story the whole time. Okay. So the TLDR is what we call Harvest Moon is now an entirely new franchise established in 2014 by the same developer that released the original franchise, but that's not the original franchise is now called Story of Seasons. In Japan, it never changed its name.
Wow.
So when we say we're playing Harvest Moon, we are not playing the same franchise that started in 1998 or 96. We are playing an entirely new franchise called Harvest Moon, stylized in the same way to capture that audience.
Which we did not know when we picked this up. So when we were
did not.
sitting down in the spring of this year, we started talking about games we were going to play. And we were like, well, what games are coming out this year? And one of the games that we looked up that were coming out was Harvest Moon.
Yeah.
And so we said, oh man, I haven't played a Harvest Moon game in however long.
And we still haven't.
Let's play the next. And the story is that we still haven't played a Harvest Moon game in however long.
And that means I've never played a Harvest Moon game.
You've never played.
So technically,
But
you
you
have
have.
played a Harvest Moon game, not an original Harvest
But
Moon
not a
game.
Harvest Moon
You
game.
have not played a Story of Seasons game.
It's very clear.
I'm going home.
So, also, here's a fun fact. Since neither franchise was doing a good job at updating their mechanics, as they were just kind of pumping these out to make money, right?
Tracks.
Which, people do. A single person developed a game called Stardew Valley,
Which is amazing.
which is amazing
If you
and
haven't
has taken
played
the
it,
world by
go play it.
storm,
I have not.
It's great.
and has sold over 20 million copies, which for a single developer is incredible.
Wait,
It's well done.
one person?
One person.
One person did it.
It developed it
Wow.
for 4 years, but yeah.
And he did an amazing job. It's in
It's
32-bit.
Concerned Ape is his developer name.
So it feels like you're playing like a Super Nintendo game.
Yeah.
But it's a perfect Harvest Moon game, not Harvest Moon.
So, yeah, all of this is to say that we are playing the new Harvest Moon game, but not connected to the original Harvest Moon games, because that's an entirely new franchise. I hope we've confused our audience enough with this. I need to insert a Charlie Day meme here, where he's like...
This goes this. This goes this.
Wait, we needed a full pin-up
Yeah.
here to explain it.
So the reason we kind of covered this is because we kind of went through this little odyssey while I was looking up this game. I was like, oh my god, what's happening here? But it's also a sneak peek into the legalese and corporate and big business nature of video games,
Yep.
right? Which we often forget exist when we're playing. right? And so like we know that games are big business now because of how much money they make, but they've always been big business. It just weren't as much in the like zeitgeist, so to speak.
It also explains like why like when we look around on this game, almost nobody is playing this game right now.
Yeah,
because they've really split their fan base.
There's a pretty active Reddit community, but I don't know how many people are in it. And if you go to like How Long to Beat, usually have like dozens or hundreds of people playing a game at once. There's like 7 people playing this game.
So,
but people seem to like it.
It's good. It's a fun game.
But yeah, you're right. They like split the fan. Well, they didn't really split the fan base. I don't think people understand any of this, right?
I think they split the fan base in that there's probably some hardcore people that are Story of Seasons fanatics.
Yeah, they're like, I know this is not Harvest Moon. I'm playing Story of Seasons.
Stardew Valley obviously peeled off a ton of people that are now probably Stardew Valley fans.
And the people that pick up Harvest Moon are like us that think like Harvest Moon is
this
Harvest
is the original. Yeah. Like,
well,
who is playing this Harvest Moon to play this Harvest Moon? I'd bet almost nobody.
We may be professors, but we still learn things every day.
We do. That's what makes us professors.
I mean, yeah, I was going to say, that's like a job requirement.
Well, yeah, thank you. Okay. So with that, think about that, let's jump into our personal experience with farming simulators, not just Harvest Moons, Story of Seasons, farm stories, etc. And so please share also how many hours you're into this game, Winds of Anthos. Harvest Moon, Winds of Anthos is the title of this game, and where you are in the game and your first impressions. So I will start with John.
Yeah, so I played a decent amount of farming simulators. I really enjoy like the subcategory. I find it like really relaxing. It's a fun genre to play. As I said, I start with Harvest Moon 64, and the reason I start with that, why a small 8-year-old would start with Harvest Moon, is because my library would frequently rent out games, and all of the other games would be rented out, and nobody would rent out that game. And so I would rent it a lot, and I would play all the way through it. I'm really sad that I never owned a copy. And then I played the Harvest Moon game on the GameCube, because I liked the N64 version. Can't remember what that one's called, but it was 3D. And then I played Stardew Valley all the way through with my brother twice, I think. And now I've played Winds of Anthos. So I'm fairly familiar with farming simulators. I do enjoy them. I've always enjoyed, like, to a lesser extent, because Harvest Moon is both a farming simulator and a dating sim, kind of. And I always have enjoyed the community building aspects of dating sims. Like, I'm not sure I'm into, like, dating sims themselves, but I like the fact that, like, as you get to know the villagers better and raise their little heart scores, you get to have, like, special scenes with them where you
like
learn more about them.
You like it as a mechanic, not as the core premise of a game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't, like, play dating sims, but I do
I mean, if you do, fair.
Which is fair. Yeah. Wonderful, yeah. But I do like games like Persona where, as you get to know people, you unlock more knowledge about their past and their history. That's kind of fun for me.
So, what are your first impressions, and where are you in the game, also?
I am like 20 hours in, 21 hours in.
For reference, this is a 50-hour game.
Yeah, so I'm about halfway through. I would say maybe a little over half. I've broken out of the first area, which is a big part.
Brandon's giving me a look, but so we originally thought
started it.
We thought this was going to be like a 20-hour game, and then when it came out, we realized it was a 40 to 50-hour game.
Yes.
I still don't think it's going to be 50 hours, but they do they make it be long. It's not necessarily organically that long.
I don't think so, because if I had to guess, I think at 20 hours, I am like 75% of the way through, is my guess. Unless there's some crazy turn or reveal.
I mean,
who knows?
JRPGs.
Yeah. JRPGs, and that is...
Like Brendan said in here, maybe the final thing you have to do is grow turnips to fight a god or something.
Oh, that was
to me. I said that.
But I was also like, that wouldn't surprise me.
At all in this particular game. No, I would say first impressions is that this is a good game. I'm having a fun time playing it, but it is fundamentally different than any Harvest Moon game we played before, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, it's a mostly fun game, but it's maybe not a Harvest Moon game in what Story of Seasons is. Right?
It wasn't what I was prepared to play.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to go next here. So my experience with Harvest Moon farming simulators is basically zero. I remember when I was a kid, I had a friend of mine that was also playing Harvest Moon, and we were like 8 and 10, and I was like, why are you Evolved Games playing this? But he got into a lot more of like weird games than I did, and I like, looking back now, I like respect him for it. But at the time I was like, grab FIFA 99, you idiot. And I've also seen like my girlfriend plays Animal Crossing. She's put like 600 hours into it or something like that.
Yep.
I know people that play a lot of Stardew Valley and love it and replay it a lot. But that's about it. I've never really played them, right? So in the game, I have unlocked the beach town, which is the third town you unlock.
Yep.
And I am now living there, and I'm waiting to. I'm growing tomatoes. I think is what I need. So I'm waiting for it. What a sentence! I'm waiting for the tomatoes to grow so this lady can make some stew that'll make the town revitalized, so that we can then find a specific thing that we're looking for.
A pearl.
A pearl.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to get into the management sim parts of it and like the scheduling parts and stuff, but I still think like it's not relaxing for me. It's stressful, just because of days are really fast. Brendan, what about you?
Yeah, I have never played Harvest Moon before, and my experience with farming sims is pretty much limited to the gardening aspect of Persona 4. That's really about it. And so my older brother had played Harvest Moon back when we were kids, and so I knew a little bit about the game, and I was kind of interested in trying it out. And so this was not at all what I expected.
Yeah, again, you knew a little bit about what you thought the game was going to be.
Exactly, yeah. But then, like, what it is versus what my expectations were have diverged dramatically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm interested in seeing where it
And
goes.
you're in the beginning of the game, right? What's the last thing you did?
I'm an hour and a half in. I'm working on fixing the flower shop, mostly because I've decided that I want to make Judy my spouse, because I've found out that there's a dating sim aspect to this game,
Yes.
and so I was like, all right, here we go.
Also, you have to fix the flower shop, because if you don't, like, that's part of the tutorial. Not
Yeah.
to tell you about that.
I'll also say, not to like crush your hopes and dreams, but unless you like really pick up your playtime, you will not be able to marry Judy. You have to have $100,000. You have to buy a full-size house before anybody will marry you.
And also, I think you have to, like...
There's a side quest with a blue feather.
And I think... Don't you have to, like, fix all of the towns to be able to, like, come back and marry people?
No, you just have to have a $100,000 house, and you have to have
Did you
a
look this
special
up?
blue feather. Well, that's true in every other game.
I don't think this is... Well, you can't
That's
use...
true.
You can't
I
use
can't use other games.
Can't use that heuristic. I think in this game, it's a post-game thing also.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, is it a post-game thing? I'll double-check. But is it a post-game thing or a post-maxing out the town's cultural level thing?
Right.
Which I realize is gibberish for people listening. So in this game, or in other Harvest Moons as well...
Not the maxing out the towns.
Okay, the town has a level of like how culturally relevant it is.
Yeah.
So the
how
more,
much you've done in the town.
Yeah. So the more you fix things up, the more new and nice things show up in town as well, right? So like you fix the flower shop and you fix the inn, and all of a sudden your own little like well has a little cover on it.
Yep.
I didn't put that there, but the town gets more built up the more you fix things, right? Because the implication is that other people are fixing things as well.
Yep.
Right. So I think you have to either have to max out a town, or you have to finish the game to be able to also marry people. They don't want you to get distracted with that kind of stuff.
Well, like, what could possibly be a core mechanic of the game?
Yep.
Exactly.
And frankly,
don't be distracted with that.
yeah, and frankly, like, I mentioned this with Persona and maybe also with BG3, though. I mean, because they both have the mechanic. Like, there's something very rewarding about actually building relationships with NPCs.
Nope.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Women and children distract you from adventure.
Yeah.
And that is what we're here
That is what
to
Harvest
do.
Moon's about.
Are we really, though?
So this is a nice segue
That's
here.
not what I
We're going to
signed
skip a
up for.
topic and come back, but a nice segue into the tutorial of this game, which is lengthy. So I don't think we could have picked a better opposite to BG3 for the tutorial.
With the tutorials.
The whole
Because-
not avoid is
yeah,
a tutorial of BG3.
I mean, is it though?
Is it?
It is.
They try. They say like, oh, tutorial, but here's 700 mechanics we'll never tell you about.
So if you
In
listen,
this game,
if you listen to our Baldur's 3 podcast, Phil has a problem because Baldur's Gate 3 gave almost zero tutorial. But in this game,
it's the opposite. They give you too much tutorial and the wrong tutorial. This game, the first tutorial, it's like it could go indefinitely. Basically, it just depends on how long it takes you to fix the flower shop.
yep.
Because I think technically, if you never go fix the flower shop, you could just pass all the days, and all of a sudden a year has passed, and you're still fixing the flower shop.
It seems possible.
Yeah.
I don't
'Cause-
think there's a failure point built in.
I don't think so. I mean, we could like try it out, I guess. But if you don't plant the right things, you can easily exploit it, right? Because in the beginning of the tutorial, you don't have two of the core you don't have two of the core mechanics of this game, which is time passing, right? In the beginning,
Right.
you're stuck in an afternoon or a day, like Persona, right? You're in that area of the day, and you do
Right.
something, and time passes. In this game, you're just in that area of the day in the tutorial. So the way that Harvest Moon works is there's an actual hour counter, and as the hours go by, the day changes, and you have to go to sleep at some point.
Yeah, so I think if we take just a step back and describe like how does this game work? It is a time management game. Mm-hmm. The goal is you have a day. The day is broken up into hours, which instead of being real hours are the minutes are seconds, and you move through. And your goal is to do as much stuff in your day as you can, which is why Phil is stressed.
Because the days are very fast. It's not actually. It's like each hour is 45 seconds, so it's not one, which is the first time ever they've ever done this. And you also have stamina, which is like little hearts, like Zelda, basically, where they like will go down. If the more you move or like till or plant stuff,
so you can't just work until you drop at the end of the day. You have to make sure you eat enough.
You can do that. It just means that you lose the rest of the day. Because if all your stamina runs out, you pass out and you wake up the next morning and you're bad and someone's like, "I found you collapsed outside, and I brought you in here. Be more careful.
Be healthier."
Yeah.
So the goal is to balance those two things while growing as many crops as you can and doing as many things to helping people out to both expand the village, raise their cultural level, and make yourself more money from which to buy more things.
Yes.
So it's this cyclical management game where you're managing time, stamina, and resources. And that all is very typical Harvest Moon.
However,
every farming sim works kind of that way.
The tutorial doesn't tell you any of that. So in the tutorial, there's no stamina and there's no time.
No, they take it away. They're like, we're gonna scaffold you up, introduce you slowly.
Yeah. So they basically say like you need like iron, so they teach you how to go mine and like find iron. But since there's no stamina, you can find iron, go back out of the mine, go back in, keep doing that, which I did for like a real day in our physical world. So I have enough iron for the rest of the game. Basically.
Yeah, you should have done that.
Yeah.
Like, going back and knowing that's the way to do this.
Yeah. And you should also be chopping down every tree.
So much wood.
And destroying every stone you find.
Because afterward, you're only going to be able to chop down about 2 trees a day.
Yeah.
After the stamina actually kicks in.
So, see, because they don't tell you this kind of stuff, you don't really know. But it's easily exploitable, right? So you can have basically all the iron you need, which I do, and all the stone you need for the rest of the game. But it also doesn't introduce things like animal carrying or fast travel, which are key to this game. So I think the tutorial is not only long, but it misses the mark on what you need to know. Because once you end the tutorial, it's like, cool, you're going to leave the town because you just opened the hole in the wall, right?
Right.
Because the story of this game is bananas. And you get to leave, and as soon as you leave, they're like, by the way, time passes now, and you can get tired. Go to the next town and do this thing. And by the time you get to the next town, you have lost like 3.5 hearts of just running, and it's been
almost
4
nighttime.
hours.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have done that.
You've done this, right?
Yeah.
So you have time now.
I've left the village.
Yeah,
so you have time now. So you're out of the first part of the tutorial. Have you gotten fast travel?
No.
No,
Okay,
technically he's out of the tutorial.
Oh, is he?
The tutorial ends there, but they don't teach you this kind of... See?
The game doesn't really unlock.
That's the thing.
fast
I
travel.
haven't been sure. I'm like, am I out of the tutorial or not?
As soon as you get time, you're out of the tutorial.
Okay.
Yeah. But they don't have introduced or talk to you about key mechanics. Okay. So not only is it long, but it is poorly structured.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't teach you about the most important thing, which is managing your time. Yeah. Also, no indication of how long it's going to be, and you don't know when it's going to end or if you're out of it yet. And there's that weird quest where they're like, go talk to the harvest sprite or whatever, the harvest goddess statue.
Yep.
And once you get to the town that they tell you to get to, that quest disappears.
It just vanishes. They said, I think it's near a lake or some sort of waterfall.
The leader of the... okay, so this is hilarious. The harvest statue is like in a hill overlooking the town that you can get to by walking there like...
You can see it.
10
from
feet,
town.
right? And you ask the leader of the town, like, hey man, have you heard of this harvest goddess statue? And he's like, not around here, never heard of that. I'm like, what are you hiding? Because I can see it.
It's like going to Rio and being like, have you seen Christ the Redeemer?
It's like, oh, I don't understand. I don't...
No.
That must be an American thing. I'm not sure what that is. So, tutorial, not super great. Although I'd appreciate that they have it, they don't teach you the right things.
Still on the quest to look for the ideal tutorial.
I was going to say, this
either.
is going to be like our whole thing.
The ideal tutorial is probably Breath of the Wild's Great Plateau, but we can talk about that at some other point. So we alluded to the story. I'm going to let John take the lead on this one.
Yeah, so I started playing this game. I was the first one to start playing this game. So I downloaded it before we were ready to start playing, and I started working my way through it. And this story is both fun and cute, And it's fine. It does what it needs to do to for you to understand the plot.
They make fun of the story themselves.
They make fun of the story themselves. So there is a level of self-awareness here before I just shit on the writers. But as a writer myself, I have to point out some of the ridiculous nature of this story. So in most Harvest Moon games, the story is very simple. There's not much story needed because mostly it's just about restoring your farm. So in
Animal Crossing.
Same with Animal Crossing. Like in Stardew Valley, you get a letter from your grandpa. You're working at a big corporation. Your grandpa says, if you want to be happy, move out to this farm and start farming things. I'm passed away. I leave the farm to you. And you're like, okay, sounds good. And you move out and you start farming. End of story. Doesn't go any deeper than that. In some of the Harvest Moon games, there's this harvest goddess and sprite relationship where you move to this farm with your grandpa. You meet a harvest goddess, and she says, in order to restore this town to its fully, you need to harvest and make the town whole by bringing vegetables. Not in this game. This game begins with a volcanic eruption. So it starts, and the goddess is overlooking a river.
So you guys can see the differences already.
It's wild. And the goddess sees this volcano erupt, and she says, "Oh, that's bad," as most volcanic eruptions are. And she waves her hands, and she creates a series of walls.
No. She has little sprites help her out. She has little mini
little
helpers.
Little fairies.
Yeah, they're fairies.
And she claps her hands, they disappear, you don't know where they go, and she creates these walls. And what these walls do is they wall in all of the villages in this region.
They either wall in the villages or they wall villages out, like a beach town.
Like the beach town, yeah. And then she takes a message, says this is what's happening, throws it in a bottle, and throws the bottle in the river. This bottle floats down the river and washes up on a beach. Cutaway. Then we wake up, and it is our main character. Our main character is in our house, on our farm, with this... Farm
is a strong word for what we have. It's a plot of land.
A plot of land outside a house.
Yeah.
And what I can only describe as, the androgynous version of the Doctor from Back to the Future.
Androgynous and 12.
And 12.
Yeah.
A young, but very clearly a Marty McFly and Doc kind of relationship.
Yeah.
As she wakes you up and says, "John, get out of bed. We've got to do something. We've got to do something today." And today of all days, you wake up and you're like, you know what, gosh dang it, I am going to do something, with nothing else inspiring this. So you wake up in this village.
Because at this point, you've been living in the village with a wall around it.
So you wake up in the village and you find out that you are in this village, and this village has a wall completely put around it. At which point, as a player...
Like Attack on Titan.
Like Attack on Titan.
Yeah,
a giant wall. Yeah. And at this point, as a player, you're like, that wall just appeared. This is a catastrophe. But as you begin to enter the dialogue, you're like, oh no, the wall's been here. I've just been living here. And you find out, how long has the wall been here? 10 years. So now we have all kinds of questions about the economy, because this town of 6 people has been sustaining itself somehow.
Well, there's no...
In a walled-in community?
You haven't been farming, because your farm has... your land has, rocks and bugs on it and stuff.
How are people getting food, and why is today the day that we woke up and decided to become cognizant? Unclear. So then you're like, all right, well, we've all been trapped in here. The first thing we should do is really thinking about escape. And everybody tells you, there's no escape. Nobody's gotten out in 10 years. There's no way to fix this. And you're like,
even though your town has an ocean opening.
Well, that's where we're going to get to. So
Right.
then you end up chasing a chicken, you walk down to the beach, and you find out there's a beach, and it opens to the ocean. And on that beach, you find a message from the harvest goddess.
The bottle.
From
10 years ago.
Which means, guys, and hang with me, that the ocean is connected to the river that ends up here. Because she threw it into a river, it washed down the river and ended up in your ocean. Which means you should be able to swim from that ocean to the river. And everybody's been like, yeah, but that's a lot of work. We're going to continue to be isolated. And you find out these people are not only isolated in themselves, but there are other people in the village that have family members trapped on the other side of this wall, and they've just been like, well, it's gone.
It's like, oh, that sucks.
And you go to the restaurant like, yeah, man, my dad used to do this 10 years ago. I still remember it. I wonder how he's doing outside the wall. It's like, what?
Checked. Nobody's built a rowboat. Nobody's tried anything.
A ladder.
We have no idea how they're feeding themselves. And then you're like, all right, well, this is a message from a harvest goddess that says we can get outside the village. And your friend, who's this doctor, turns to you and goes, right, I do remember there being legends about a goddess that would be here and hang out with people before the volcanic eruption. You're like, wait a minute, This was only 10 years ago. What is up with this goldfish level memory of these people? This shouldn't be passed into legend and lore yet.
Doc is like 12 or 14 or something like that.
But there are people in the village that are 30.
At least.
And they should
More
be
than
like,
that.
no, there was a harvest goddess. Yeah. If you're going to ask her for help, we can all go together. So the note mentions something about the wall. So you and Doc go to this wall, and you proceed to knock on it with a big hammer. And that wakes up a fairy inside of it, and the fairy goes... So this is the part where I
think that they make fun of themselves. So the Doc's like, I'm going to create a wall destruction device. And you get to the wall, and he presses the big red button like Wile E. Coyote.
You think it's going to be an explosion.
Yeah, and it's like one of those toy hammers that goes like... Yeah. That
Against
just
the wall.
hits the wall. Yeah.
And then... and then this fairy wakes up out of the wall and basically goes, oh yeah, man, I've been asleep for a while. Yeah, you can get out. Snaps her fingers and opens the wall.
Opens a door.
And opens a small portion of the wall, and you're allowed to leave. That is the wildest setup for a story I've ever encountered in my entire life. Like, so much convolution that makes zero sense for no payoff at all.
Well, I think the payoff is the they had to give you a reason to explore, because this game is a lot of based on exploration and not necessarily based on the farming.
They needed you to say, here's why you need to go to each of these regions, and here's why these regions are going to be region locked. But it just feels like almost any excuse in the whole world would have worked better than what they came up with.
So,
like,
what I think
they could have done the Pokemon thing and made one land across the water.
They
and
could have
had HMs with Surf and Fly, or...
Alright, I've got it. Here we go.
Oh,
you couldn't leave the village because the land is filled with ashen zombies from the volcanic eruption.
That sounds like Harvest Moon.
Yeah, and then Doc manages to invent a miracle device, a gun. This is the first of its kind in the world. So she gives it to you. Now you're the only one with this weapon that can defeat the ashen zombies. So you have to go out to reach the other villages and like spread this.
That would have made as much sense as.
I think you're maybe on the writing team for Harvest Moon too.
Yeah.
Well, look, all I'm saying is I just now turned this into like an actual adventure game with combat mechanics.
Yeah, no, there's no mechanics whatsoever in this game other than walking. But. I think it's funny that the beach towns, when I got to the beach town, I was like, well, I see a wall, I don't see the town, right? So you get to the beach town and you find out that the wall was, the reason the beach town was walled off, so they do explain this, so the volcano would reach your town.
Yep.
But the beach town wasn't going to get reached by the volcano, it was actually a tsunami that was coming around.
Which is weird because the volcano is right on the shore of the beach town. So geographically, this makes no sense.
So the harvest goddess, instead of putting a wall... Here's the thing I don't get. They can put a wall wherever they want. Why would they not put a wall before the town, in the water, such as to stop the tsunami from hitting the town? No.
Or just around the volcano.
They put the wall at the end of the beach, which means that the entire town got absolutely wrecked by a tsunami.
By the tsunami.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they need a reason for you to rebuild the town.
Yes.
Right? That is the goal.
That is
the goal is for us to move from town to town, wake up the sprites there.
Because you can now move your farm, right?
You relocate your farm to the new town, and you help the town rebuild. You're basically, this is like hurricane rescue effort the game, right?
Hurricane rescue fetch quest the game.
You are playing the role of the Red Cross, and your job is to move from town to town and restore the town back
and
to
date
its
the people there.
Previous vitality. Well, I mean, the dating is just a bonus, I think. If you save their town, they might as well thank you in some way and going on nice dates.
We alluded to this a couple times. There are some differences to the original. I'm going to say original Harvest Moon, but I mean Farm Story, right? So Story of Seasons now, what it's called now. So the emphasis in this game is not on farming
at all.
Like their emphasis is on they do want you to have different crops so you can give to people, but they're not actually asking you to build a better farm at any point, right? They just you have different plots of land. So you have small plots of land, not as big as they used to be. Seed buying is restricted. You get seeds by finding these little harvest sprites that give you seeds.
So you have to find around the map like a drop quest.
It tries to. It's like an open world game kinda. Mining is kind of a big part of this. So John, tell us a little bit about some of the differences here and how you feel about it.
Yeah, so let's compare this. So in the original Harvest Moon, you had a farm.
It is a farming simulator.
Yeah, and we'll refer to this as Story of Seasons. So in the original Story of Seasons, you went out and it was a farming simulator. You're given a farm by your grandpa. You went to the store. You're like, hey, can I buy some seeds? They're like, sure, here's 3 turnips. And you went, you grew those 3 turnips, sold them for 7 turnips worth of money, used that to buy 7 turnips, went back, planted it, made enough money that you could buy maybe a couple of corn ears.
The time is passing, days
Time
are
is passing, and you're slowly building up your farm, and it's more about like managing income streams and outcome streams. Like I used to play the old Harvest Moon games with an Excel sheet because I'm a nerd, and you could manage when your crops would be done. But you only had one farm, and you had to like clear away all the rubble from your farm because it was left in disrepair. But that you only cleared it away so that you could plant further crops and do more things, right? Mm-hmm. This game, they give you a little tiny, like, what is it, 4x5 to start with? I think 20 square plot?
I think it's a 6x5 because you get 30 water, and 30 waters the whole thing at once.
And they give you all the seeds you need to plant that the first time. And then after that, when you go back to the store, there's just, like, 1 turnip in the store. And you're like, well, how am I supposed to continue this farm? They're like, you need to go out and find the fairy sprites that roam this land, and ask them kindly for 1 seed.
And some of them are shy.
And if you approach them too quickly, they will run away. So you have to crouch and sneak up and then press A. And then maybe we will give you 1 additional carrot seed. So you have to spend entire days roaming around to track these shy spirits to maybe get the seeds that you want or didn't want, unless you want to really use some sort of... And then you get to go back and plant more.
I use the map search to only catch the sprites that I want because there's no inventory space.
Yeah, it's such a system, and so like it's just completely different. And then in the other old games, then you would grow these mostly to make money, and then you could buy everything you wanted. So there were things like mining mechanics, but the mining mechanics were supplementary. It was like a mini game.
Yeah.
Because if you needed bronze or iron or steel, you could buy it at like 10 times the price, or you could go find it in the mine. Or if you needed like flowers for your girlfriend, you could go buy flowers for 1,000, or you could grow them for like 5. And so it was always a question of like time versus cost to do that thing. Here,
which is interesting.
Which is cool. It's a fun game.
Yeah.
Here you must go on grand adventures. So that is the whole point of the game.
I don't know about grand.
You must walk.
You must hike.
As for one of my favorite movies, Night Tale. What are you doing? Trudging.
Yeah.
What is trudging?
Walking simulator in the game, basically.
Yeah.
So this is what I want to talk about here is like we talked about genres when we talked about Hades, right? And genres in video games are extremely important because they not only tell us what they are, but tell us what they're not. Mm-hmm.
They prepare us for the thing we're about to engage.
They manage expectations.
Right.
Right. So we talked about how we came into this and we thought we were getting into it, and we didn't. Right. Because our expectations for a Harvest Moon game are farming, not action adventure minus the action. Right. So
adventure.
Yeah, adventure game with walking. So games sometimes have like a bunch of modifiers, right? For so like asymmetrical, story-based, beat 'em up, roguelite. That's just Hades, right? So the modifiers exist because they tell us information that is important. So if I like first-person games and not asymmetrical cameras, then I probably won't pick up Hades even if I may like beat 'em up, right? Because I don't like that looking from that angle. Great. So what essentially genres do is, I like to give this comparison in my classes because when I'm talking about video game genres, so they're really good at telling us what something is not, right? So if you go into Baskin-Robbins, other stores are available, and you ask for a vanilla cone, you expect to get something tasting vanilla-y. So like Madagascar vanilla with chocolate chips, sugar-free, whatever. It's going to be a white cone with iced cream in it.
Right.
Tasting like vanilla.
Sure. Right.
If they hand you a pack of Cheetos, you're going to be like, I know what ice cream is, and it's not this.
It's definitely not vanilla. It's
definitely not vanilla.
Cheesy flavor.
So that is what Harvest Moon kind of did here, because it doesn't... I went to their website, I went to like Natsume's website, I looked up the Nintendo website. They never actually define the genre in there. They basically have the name Harvest Moon and talk about what you're going to do, but they don't talk about a genre. And what they're trying to do here is they're trying to like capitalize on a Harvest Moon heuristic, right? Which we'll talk about here. That is basically like, you know what Harvest Moon is, this is Harvest Moon, and then you play it and you're like, but is it though?
Is it?
So what is a heuristic, John? You want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, so a heuristic, I love talking about heuristics because heuristics are mental shortcuts. They're ways for us to solve problems that aren't immediately solvable or actionable, right? So I always give the example in my class when I talk about heuristics. I talk about like solving or opening a lock. So if you had a lock and it had 4 numbers to solve that lock combination, there are a couple ways you can solve it, right? First, we could not use a heuristic. We could use what's called a brute force algorithm, which is we try every combination in the lock, right? 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 2, and it works really well. But what's the problem with brute force algorithms?
Takes forever.
Takes forever. They're really slow. You have to do it hundreds of thousands of times, and if the more options there are, the harder it is to do, right? Then we could solve it the other way with an equation where you say, if you input these variables, you will always get these variables. It's solved. The problem is fixed. That'd be great, but a lot of times, like if we're trying to break a lock,
you
don't have the variables. You don't know what that would be, so you can't solve it with an equation. So you have to use a heuristic, and a heuristic is a shortcut that uses predetermined rules or subsets of rules that typically work in most scenarios to solve the problem. So if we go back to a lock, we know the lock is 4 digits, and we know that somebody that's a person set this lock. What are 4-digit numbers that people tend to use as passwords?
1, 2, 3, 4.
So we try 1, 2, 3, 4. What else?
8, 4, 2, 1.
Sure, absolutely. And then after that, we might start working our way through, like, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 1, 8, 2, 4, 1, and then after that, we start to go maybe birthdays or years. And that saves us because we know if they're using their own birthday, we don't have to do anything that doesn't have a 1 or a 9 or a 2 or a 0 in the first set of digits, because nobody was born in the 1800s that's opening a bike lock, probably. If you're out there, listeners, and you are, I would like to talk to you. But
yeah, one of our 17 listeners is a
Vampire
person
Lord.
born in 1995 that loves bicycles.
Could be.
Yeah.
So that allows you to get through it much quicker because now we only have to open 2 locks. These are heuristics, and the reason they're so cool is in the field of rhetoric. When we talk about communication, we're always trying to find an answer to what makes this situation the most persuasive, or what can I do to convince the most people. And that is a problem that has too many variables to solve by brute force or through equation, and so you have to come up with a series of heuristics, right? Start with a friendly introduction, generate ethos, generate pathos, use logic. All of these in rhetoric are heuristics to make yourself more persuasive in a shorter amount of time. And in video games, when we talk about searching for things or doing things...
And mental models of video games. Mental models are heuristics. Yeah.
We're creating these heuristics. We're saying, all right, I know that I want to play a game where I grow things in the ground, sell them, make money, and use that money to produce more things, and that is what I would call a farming simulator. So when I get into the farming simulator and I grow things and they say, oh, we don't really care about the money, but you do need to deliver those turnips to Janice, and Janice lives in the town 3 towns away over the hill through the frozen wasteland, get a walk-in, it really throws off our heuristic, and now we have to go back to like brute forcing it mentally until we figure out what the new heuristics are.
Also why it stressed me out, I think, is I was expecting the time not to pass as fast and them not to require me to like... Because in the beginning of the game without fast travel, you have to walk to the next town over, which is... Admitted, I think this is cool. It's like a 3-hour walk away in game, but like that takes up a lot of your day, man.
And so here's my question, and this is a question really for you, Phil, is like, why do you think they did this? Why do you think they took a formula that worked, what we might call like farming sim with some minor dating sim and adventure elements, and they turned it into an adventure game with minor farming elements?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons. I think one is to distantiate themselves from Story of Seasons. To offer a different experience. So I don't know what the sales are like for the the new Harvest Moon series, but I wouldn't expect them to be amazing. Yeah. Just based on the fact that this one doesn't have a Wikipedia page, seems to be not that professors use Wikipedia, but I think they did it for that, and I think they did it because there's what I like to call an open worldization of video games.
Pandemic.
Where people think like Breath of the Wild worked because of the open world. Let's make an open world game. And Breath of the Wild didn't work because of the open world. It worked because it was a well-designed game in which the story matched having an open world, and the open world itself was designed as architecturally sound as one designs a building in a game, right? Because when you're building a building in a game, you have to make it look like an actual building that could exist in real life, or else we're going to be like, this doesn't stand up. Like, why does this exist? There's no walls. Right? So they built the world based on... There's a concept that they were using that every time you looked at the horizon, you should be able to see always at least 3 things you could do. So if you climb the mountain, you're like, oh, cool mountain, I'm going to climb that. You climb that mountain, you should be able to see another mountain, a shrine, and a big enemy. And you could do one of those things. And when you get to that point, 3 more things. And that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how they built, and that's why Breath of the Wild was revolutionary in terms of open world, because it wasn't a game that had an open world. It was a game made to be an open world.
Designed for the open world.
So this game was kind of like, people like that. People like the graphics, because this graphics are similar as well, kind of cel-shaded-y. Let's do it here, right? So they had taken the adventure part of Zelda and made it into this game, but there's no action part of this game.
Yeah, it does feel very Breath of the Wild in spirit.
Yeah, your adventuring is walk to the next town because they have stuff there that you need to do.
Yeah.
What is that stuff? More fetch quests, right?
Oh, fetch quest the game.
Yeah. So also the walking and like moving is very slow in this game. And we talked about the camera a little bit. First thing I did in this game when it started was check the menu to see if I could speed up the text. I couldn't. And then I checked the menu if I could speed up the camera, and I could. And the first thing I did was max it out.
Because it is a slow
the
camera
camera's
turn.
a slow pan, and you can see this in your character too. If you, in most games that are third person, if you flick the opposite direction on the joystick, right, your character will face that direction.
Right.
In this game, if you flick in that direction, they will slightly turn to the left or right.
Which I assume is to increase realism.
Maybe I think it's a part of it is like it's also a loading mechanic kind of thing to avoid lag.
Gotcha.
But you can see it a lot when you're riding a horse, for example, because the horse, when you start moving sideways with the horse doesn't turn and move in that direction. It moves sideways across the screen until it's facing that direction.
Oh, yeah, the turn radius is so large.
It's still going in the same speed, but it's like sideways running, but going forward.
If your horse was a car, it'd be an 18-wheeler. It takes a
long time to turn. So do you, right? So I think it is like this movement towards making games open world because that's what the people want, and
rather than considering if that's what the game needs.
That's what the game needs, and whether that's really what the people want.
So to go to your building metaphor, like they saw Legend of Zelda, which was like a football stadium built for football, and they said, "Man, people love the NFL and they love football. Let's turn our Walmart into a football stadium. We'll just put all the aisles in the middle of the field. It'll be raining all the time on the people that are shopping, and people will love it because they can just like gather and cheer on the shopping. And you're like, does anybody cheer on shopping? And they're like, shh. I've seen it work.
Yeah, it's like, it works for them, it's going to work for us.
It works for them, it's going to work
it doesn't not work, and I will say the open world is well designed in the sense that if you are walking around, the harvest, they use the harvest wisps with the seeds to give you always something to go to see.
There's a little fairy everywhere you go.
There's like trees growing apples or cherries or coffee beans, which look a lot like cherries. There's animals you can go pet, that kind of. So there's even like, because you can cut grass in this game, like scything grass is something that you always see tall grass. Right. So they do always give you like 2 to 3 to 4 things to always do. Right. So they do a good job at designing that part. However, did we need to have a space in between the towns that takes 3 hours to traverse?
Right.
Probably not.
Well, and it's so interesting because conceptually I think it's, like you said, it's well laid out. But it is
they did
laid
a good
out,
job designing it. It's whether we needed it.
And it is laid out, because they did this for the first time, it is laid out very simply, right? It's not like a Legend of Zelda where when we look over the horizon there's like a temple, a really cool new area, and like a big boss. You look and there's like more wood you could chop, a fruit you could get, and a harvest sprite, which means that after 10 hours of gameplay, that gets pretty darn repetitive.
Yeah, and but that's because the fetch quest, the game makes you go back to these things.
You always have to go back to them and keep fetching.
If I can add, like, one thing I think it has done well is that at least for, like, its graphics, the open world is very pretty.
It's very pretty. It's very well designed.
I enjoyed that. However, I will say, the moment when I was able to walk up to a wild jaguar and pet it on the head, I was thinking, like, I deserve to die in this moment.
No, you can have it in your barn.
You can have it in your barn. I'm close to having it in my barn.
It eats hay.
Yeah.
The jaguar...
Everything eats hay.
Everything eats hay. Oh, it's feed.
So it's made from weeds.
Yeah, it is. So
that's why I've been pulling weeds.
Yep.
That's interesting, too, because it's like, I don't... The reason I don't think we need this also is because there's a contradictory nature here, right? Because they're like, go out, run to the next town, explore,
seek adventure.
But also, your day takes 40 seconds, and your stamina goes down every time you take 3 steps.
And you gotta get these turnips.
grown. So if you really want to get these turnips grown, I don't think you want to explore very far. But you gotta explore very far, or else you're not gonna get the other stuff. And you're like, what do you want me to do?
What is the goal? What didn't happen in the other games. So in the other games, because the mining and any interactions and stuff like that was auxiliary, it was left for auxiliary days, right? Like, a lot of times you would spend your whole day growing and farming, and then when it rained and you didn't have to water your crops because it was raining, those were the days that you would go visit the mine or see what the heck was happening up at the big tree or wander down to the South Beach and do some fishing. But those were made as auxiliary. Here, where they have to be a main story part, it really does feel fractured and split.
I've only fished once because fishing takes forever.
Fishing wastes so much time.
for the fish to bite, which I get is like realistic, but like how much realism do I need in this game? But like for the fish to bite your
What are you talking about? It's been
bait,
10 years.
I know. For the fish to bite your bait, it like season it takes it like, I'm gonna say real life 5 to 7 seconds to bite it, but in the game that's an hour basically that the fish is just moving towards your bait and slowly like press, and then it takes a while to come to you. So fishing takes forever. I haven't fished again since, because I was like, this was 4 hours
Of my life.
So I will say, although the stamina, which runs out very quickly, and the time is fast, this all gets a lot more manageable once you unlock fast travel.
Yes.
And once you are able to get an animal you can ride.
Which is evidently not part of the tutorial.
Not part of the
They
tutorial.
don't give you fast travel until, like, a little past where you are.
Yeah.
When do I get a horse?
You have to...
Whenever you want one.
Whenever you want
You
one.
go out and pet one in the wilds.
You gotta keep
and when
petting
you
it.
pet it enough,
Okay, I'm sorry.
it will become your horse.
This is supposed to be a game for kids, and we're teaching them that they can befriend wild
Who said
animals.
This is a
But
game for
I don't know if
kids.
this is a game for kids, man.
I think this is a game
have you
aimed...
looked at this game?
I think the visuals are like cutesy, but I don't think it's a game for kids.
Yeah, I think it's more like kawaii than...
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay, well, in that case, fair. But I'm like, is this really the message we want to be sending, that you can just walk up to wild animals and start petting them?
Yeah, jaguars.
Jaguars.
They're nice. They're nice people.
Bears.
Bears, Sasquatches. If you have the day one DLC.
They have day one DLC for this nonsense.
They have a
Alright, that's-
Sasquatch.
Yeah, day one DLC. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! See, I just keep wanting to turn this game into something more.
Yeah.
Adventure-y, because
adventure.
you're
Yeah.
having
Well-
the reverse genre issue where
Yeah.
you've never played this game before, so you get in and you're like, all right, it's an adventure game. I love adventure games. Wait, why doesn't
It's
my
an action-adventure game. I love action-adventure games. Where's the action?
Where's the action?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like where are the lake monsters for me to like either fight
Or even if it didn't
befriend?
have combat, like if the adventure like had consequences.
Or there's like story elements everywhere.
Because
yeah.
if you, like I said, if you're run out of stamina and you pass out, you just wake up in your house because someone was nice enough to carry you there.
Yeah.
Which I don't think would happen in this world, in our world. But so what happens is there used to be a punishment for this, which was like you have to pay the hospital bill or something.
Yeah, so when
right?
you used to pass out in the old games, you could mine until you passed out, but that was a really bad thing because you'd wake up at the doctor's office, they'd take like $1,000 from you, and sometimes you would even like miss a day or two while you're in the hospital, which in the previous Story of Seasons, the
catastrophic.
Yeah, and the festivals and like people's birthdays happened on particular days. So if you like passed out in the
Here too,
mines, then you would miss a festival. But in those games, if you like missed that festival, sometimes you couldn't get like the particular chicken or the group of seeds or whatever you were trying to get.
Yeah.
So in this game, actually, sometimes when I like, because now that I have fast travel and I have a horse, my stamina doesn't run out that much, and I have upgraded it once, which is a mechanic in this game as well, which is not the best. But next week we'll talk about this. Then now, whenever it's like 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. and I'm done doing everything for that day,
You just pass out.
I'll just run as far as I can and pass out at like 11:30. Because if you go to bed before midnight, you wake up at 6 a.m. the next day fully rested.
in your house.
If you pass out or not, that still happens. So it's sometimes faster, especially when I didn't have fast travel. It was faster for me to explore until I passed out, as long as I passed out like after 11 or after 10.
Right.
Because it was faster than running back.
Which again takes
Right?
away from this like farming management
Yeah.
aspect of the game, because it's basically saying, hey, you know that stamina that we pretended was so important? It's not.
It's not anymore.
Yep.
It still is, because you can still pass out, but passing out is not bad if you manage your stamina to pass out at the right time.
Right.
It actually is helpful. So this game is a big contradiction, because not only is it telling us it's a Harvest Moon game, but it's taken away the key farming element of it
Harvest
and
Moon.
prioritizing exploration. But also it encourages exploration and gives you all these things to go run to. But then if I see a Harvest Wisp on my map, it's like, it's wheat. I need wheat. Right? So I see a Harvest Wisp that has wheat seeds. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get there. But then on my way there, I see like, oh, there's a jaguar over there. I want to go pet it. But it's way far down. It's going to take me like 2 hours to run to it and back. I'm not going to do it.
Right, so
Right.
it punishes the exploration, the adventure parts
Exactly.
too, because the Harvest Moon elements are still there,
Yes.
holding you back from having
Yeah.
an adventure.
So it's like, go adventure, but if you run over there, it's going to take 2 hours. And you really got to do this other thing, so think about it. And then you don't, and you're like, you got to get animals, man. It's how you get more animals. And I was like, but you are making me not.
Right.
Right, so that's why I get stressed on this, because I see the time passing, and I'm like, I'm going to run to that lake, and it's like 11 a.m. And by the time I get to the lake, it's 12:30. And I'm like, I could see the lake, so it couldn't have been that far away.
Which almost would make sense if this was like a gacha game, or a game where like
Because you can buy more time.
where they're like, buy more energy crystals, that'll help you for. That would make sense, but it does seem unnecessarily punitive.
You know, Phil, I would love to hear you talk about the differences between this game's adventure/time mechanics, like the conflict there, and Persona 4's. Like, what do you think Persona 4 does better?
I think, and I talked to Jen about this, I think what Persona 4 does is, or the Persona games in general, is they give you, the time mechanic is not an actively passing thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, you are in the morning, you get time to decide, what do I want to choose to do? So, I want to go hang out with this person, which means that in the afternoon, I'm going to read. Right? Here, because the time is always passing, even that decision time you have in your head of like 30 seconds, 60 seconds, that's a whole hour and a half in the game. Mm-hmm. So you just lost a whole hour and a half deciding what to do. Or because the movement is so slow, sometimes I'm trying to collect my crops and I miss a crop, so I have to run back, which is 2 seconds. But in the game, 2 seconds is a lot of minutes, right? So I think what it does is because the time is so fast and the movement isn't, and it never stops, and the movement isn't very polished or it's slow on purpose. You create this situation where it's a stressor, where in Persona it's a stressor in terms of like
schedule.
Yeah. I could go today to hang out with this friend to like get this scene I'll never see again because it's only on this day, or I can go max out my stats.
There are choices.
There are choices. So you're creating a FOMO situation. In this game, it's not necessarily FOMO. It's more like I don't have enough time to do all the things I want to do because the time passes so fast, but at the same time you're asking me to explore. Right, so I think I prefer the mechanic of this is the morning time. You can only do one thing, but you have the time to choose what you want to do.
Gotcha.
Because if you were farming a lot, like if you have 2 or 3 farms, which I ended up having at one point, I wasn't done collecting and planting and watering until like 2 p.m., which is past the morning time. So they just said, "What do you want to do in the morning? Farm or explore?" And I picked farm. Then I have my time to farm without the time passing.
Yeah.
I think it would make things less stressful and work better, especially in terms of exploration, because they were like, do you want to explore in the morning? And they're like, cool, you can do whatever you want. Explore as long as you want. And then when you're done with that, it's nighttime. Right?
Right.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. I like the Persona 1 in terms of FOMO from scheduling, not fear of running out of time because of the mechanics.
And I think Persona is really like a distilled version of what this game was trying to do. So even the older Harvest Moon games had this, though it wasn't quite as fast. This is the fastest Harvest Moon game I've ever played.
But also, it was focused on farming, not on exploring stuff.
Right,
Yeah.
and that was the other thing, is there was still this, like, choices you were trying to make, but it was much easier to make those choices because those choices were between, like, wheat or grass, or turnips or corn, right? You were almost making these choices on, like, a monthly basis, and then the day was spent going around and doing these chores. The adventure really, really does throw, like, a hitch in this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think it's just an inherent contradiction of like what they want you to do, right? Because they want you to explore, but then running takes so much time. Like the horse is an absolute game changer.
It's a necessity.
It's a necessity.
It'll make you. Well,
so the first place you can see horses is kind of between Providence and like the lake. I recommend getting the horse as soon as you can.
Yeah, the brown one there.
Yeah. So we're kind of getting to the end of the show here. We're going to get to some first impressions overview for this. So I with all this being said, the contradictions, all this stuff, I am starting to enjoy like the managing aspects and figuring out like what I have to plant, where I have to go to get the seeds. I enjoy like getting the horse, and the fast travel helps because now I had 3 farms at one point, so the fast traveling like really helps. And the horse helps explore, and like I'm building bridges and this kind of stuff. It just feels like a contradiction. Basically, it's like explore, farm, but also your stamina depletes, and you have 45 seconds of an hour. Also, this lady wants tomatoes. Right?
Gotta grow tomatoes.
Gotta grow tomatoes. It holds your hand except for the things that matter. Like if it had a in-game crop scheduler, or was a specific thing, you could go to a graph in a game that was like this crop takes 4 days, and you could, like, because it tells you that kind of, but not in the space, not places you need.
Yeah, like
right?
honestly, like just a book that was like a farmer's almanac that said like these are the crops that exist, these are how many days they take to grow, these are the climates they need to grow special versions of.
Which
those
again,
crops.
all this information is in there. It's just not very easily presented.
Not
The UI
accessible.
doesn't help.
Yeah.
So I like it, but I haven't played it in like I don't love it. I like it, but I haven't played in like 4 days, and I was going to yesterday, and I kind of didn't want to. So like it's not really making me come back.
Don't miss
I'm
it.
going to, but yeah.
Yeah.
Brandon, what do you think? First impressions.
Yeah. I don't.
You have a pun in here. Do you want me to say the pun?
Yeah, go for
It's
it.
starting to grow on me.
Yeah. Honestly, I had other jokes in there, but I took some of them out.
Never.
Oh,
Always more jokes.
My bad. Yeah, so it is starting to grow on me, but our conversation today makes me think that might not last.
Mm-hmm.
Partially because the things that I was starting to enjoy, some of the management aspects, same as you, Phil, and I was starting to enjoy some of those more like persona-y things of like, okay, I'm going to work on like befriending this person, and so this idea that, yeah, like the actual like marriage and whatnot might not even be really accessible for me. Definitely waters that down quite a bit, because what I'm enjoying far less is like the adventuring aspect, and wasting, because if I waste my entire day running to another village, I don't get time to grow my tulips, which I can give to Judy to like raise her heart score, right? So
I enjoy the adventuring because I think the world is pretty and well designed.
it is pretty.
But it's a contradiction, and I would say the other difference between this and Persona, where it's like this feels like end game, new game plus Persona, where you wake up in the morning and you run to one specific part, do that thing because you need more points in this, run to this thing, talk to this person because you haven't maxed them out yet, and then when you go to sleep you read a book because you need this one skill, right? Because you know exactly what you're going to do that day. End game Persona. Except this has time limits, and I'm in the beginning of the game, so I'm like, I need to know exactly what I'm doing, and that's what it feels like, and it doesn't. In Persona, you get to explore because if you're in an area of the world in the morning, time isn't passing, so you get to talk to people in the town. You get to see everything. You get to stop by and like, oh, look, that's a cool store. I'm going to check it out. Here you're like, cool store. I'll maybe come back in a week because I'm not going to come in this way anymore. Right?
There is that discouragement to explore. I will say that like I have not talked to any of the extraneous villagers at all.
Yeah.
And so that's why
it
takes time. And so that's what I will say. I will say that like you say it's well designed and the world is well designed. But I'm not 100% sure it is designed for adventure. Because when you get to a new village, if I was reconceptualizing this game as an adventure game, as a Harvest Moon game, and not a zombie killer thriller game, right?
I was just sticking with what they gave me.
Just saying. I think, like, the idea that each place lets you grow different crops is kind of neat. And if each village had access to stores that sold different things that you had availability to, that would be neat too. But what happens
that would encourage farming
and exploration. It would encourage you to find these other villages. But what happens is you get to this village, and because they're a 1-star village, they don't have anything, and there's no reason to explore anything.
0-star village.
And there's no reason to like do stuff in that village until the quest tells you to do stuff in that village. So I'm mostly just doing almost like a World of Warcraft thing, where I'm just rushing through the areas because that's where the quests are taking me.
Me too.
So that I can level up to get toward the end of the game. It almost feels like an MMO.
I'm rushing through so like...
But like a low-grade EverQuest 1998 MMO.
So what I have to do now is grow tomatoes for Aulani, I think her name is, in the beach town, but it's taking 4 days, so what I do is I just get on my horse at the end of the day and go as far as I can.
Right.
I'm not stopping to see anything, unless I see like a little golden wisp.
Taking time to explore.
I'm running, right? Because I'm like... So I started the second main quest before I finished the first main quest, because I'm like, this first main quest is going to take another 3 days. I might as well try to make it to this town and get this going, too.
Now, to alleviate your anxiety and your anxiety a little bit, I
need more than this to alleviate that. But
that's fine. I don't know, but I think, unlike other Harvest Moon games, which some of them have had a time limit on, or like Stardew Valley has this thing where at the end of the year you get graded or evaluated. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's any mechanic here that says you can't take 5 years as long as you want. So even time is interesting because it's this imposed mechanic
in creating stress, but at the same time there's no actual
punishment for it.
Yeah.
It's
same
like
with the stamina.
Same with the stamina. It's the same thing. So I think like there's no reason to be stressed about time. If this game takes you 5 years of playtime, it just takes you 5 years of playtime.
So John is saying, are you stressed? Have you tried relaxing?
Have you tried not being
stressed? This brings up something else that I said in there, which is, to get back to Phil's point, where like in Persona, you've got time to sort of explore around, like especially in like the early game, maybe the mid game.
It's a time section, not a time like concurrent. Concurrent passing thing. Yeah.
That raised the question for me, and I know I put it in there of like the difficulty curve in this game, because namely, so far I haven't sensed it at all, but maybe I'm paranoid after some of my gaming experiences.
If anything, the game gets easier.
There's no difficulty curve.
The game gets easier.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at. Is like I've been worried that like I'm gonna mismanage one of my days here without realizing what I'm doing, and then I'm gonna run head first into that difficulty curve.
I don't think so.
And now that you said that, actually, I don't think it's so much assuaged my anxiety as maybe not care about the game, because now there are no stakes.
Yeah, and I don't know. The interesting thing is, like, I'm 90% sure that's the case, but I'm also like, with the way this story has gone. So after I finished fixing the third town, there was a large earthquake, and I think the volcano is going to get up some shenanigans again after the fourth town. I don't think there will be any time limit on that volcano. I think it will just like happen and you'll have to prevent it.
Town, yeah.
Yeah, it'll just be an after the fourth town thing. But as I said in the comments, if this game suddenly turns and it turns out that I needed to be raising turnips to fight a demon king that comes out of the volcano, I will not be surprised at all.
Yeah.
Because this game doesn't know what it wants to be to such an extent that it becomes a boss fight at the end. I'll be like, yeah, that tracks.
I'll only be surprised because there's no combat mechanic, even though in the mines you have to dodge things, and the dodging is run away, but you're not really running because the commands are so slow that you're slowly walking away from falling boulders. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of contradictions. But like we said, we are like enjoying it.
It's just fun.
It's just not the most enjoyable thing.
It is 100%. I expected vanilla ice cream. I was handed a bag of Cheetos.
Still like Cheetos.
I don't hate Cheetos.
Yeah.
I'm just like, why Cheetos?
Yeah.
Ice cream store.
Right, yeah.
Why have you sold me Cheetos?
Well, it's not just Cheetos, though. It's a bag of, like, Cheetos and gummy worms. It's like, and why this mixture?
Why this mixture of Cheetos and gummy worms?
I don't
what are we doing this? But I don't hate Cheetos. I don't hate gummy worms. And I would say, like,
I would eat that.
every time I pick it up and play it, I'm not miserable. I'm having a good time.
It's interesting. Let's see how you feel.
I get bothered by it the more I think about it.
I know.
Yeah.
The less I think about it, the more enjoyable it is.
Right.
That's most things in life. Ignorance is bliss. That's the message here, folks. So that's the end of our First Impressions episode on Harvest Moon, Winds of Anthos. Thanks for sticking with us. We'll see you in 3 weeks. But as always, I'm Professor Phil Chavot. He's Professor John Adams, and he's Professor Ben West. And we'll see you in 3 weeks with our full review of Winds of Anthos. See you then.